A new animated short is trending everywhere online, and it's from the guy we featured before, Josh Daws, ex-Disney employee, now releasing something that is touching, something that is caring, something that is daring to perhaps upend everything Pixar, Disney animation, and beyond. The question is, will the gatekeeping system find some way to shut down new animators such as this? When you wish upon a star, I'm not sure that much will happen, but when you click the like button, folks, everyone says your life will be in perfect order. Okay, it's a little bit of an exaggeration, but we still like it when you click it. And folks, guess what else? We like it when you check out stories such as this, because this is what winning looks like. Josh Daws is putting a huge thumb on the scale of helping those in the middle win and win bigly versus animated studios like Disney. We've got the latest right now. Folks, we've got a huge story here. Josh Daws, who we've had on the channel before, ex-Disney employee, and a guy who was in a great position over there helping out with tech. Josh was exited from the company, and he has been on a tearing into animation and Disney, and this latest one is a great one. He says, this is what it felt like finding another conservative at Disney, which we didn't even know was possible to find one. But he says, furthermore, sometimes the thing you're most afraid to say out loud is the very thing someone else has been waiting to hear. He says, I made a little paper cut animated short about loneliness, honesty, and the birth of friendship. Folks, when you view this from Josh Daws, a conservative who was working at Disney, was fired, I'll play it for you, but this is how he says it feels for a conservative, maybe even a centrist, to work at the Walt Disney Company these days. This is his animated short touching on just that.
Friendship is born at the moment when one person says to another, "What? You too? I thought I was the only one."
This is beautiful. It's poignant. And I got to say, if people like Josh Daws get out there and continue to make this, they should have their own streaming platforms. This is Bluey level good. The fact that it's being spoken against power, Disney being the power. I mean, I think this is brilliant to have the little blue thought bubbles, the blue speech patterns. And then you've got a few people, supposedly these are, representing Disney, a couple of people who have a different thought. In this case, it's conservative, all right? It's centrist, as opposed to the orthodoxy that's allowed. Jonas, your thoughts on this amazing new short that Josh Daws, ex-Disney employee, has released?
It's a fascinating thing. I was actually in an environment yesterday. I used to work in the corporate world and two different Fortune 500 companies. And you had to be very careful where you brought up any conservative idea. There was an email that went out whenever a policy that was unpopular from a liberal standpoint, there would be an email from the CEO comforting the employees. Making sure that everybody knew that they took a stand, or if somebody that was conservative got into office. So yesterday I'm working in an environment where someone is recording and I made some crack about Gavin Newsom. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go political." And the person quietly said, "It's okay, you're in good company." And that person wasn't even necessarily a conservative. I don't know where they are politically, but the fact that they didn't mind a political jab in the other direction, and I see no reprisals from it. If I was in the Fortune 500 realm and did something like that, I would be called into the HR office for creating an unsafe environment. And what do they mean by unsafe is challenging anyone's ideas. Wouldn't necessarily even be about lack of focus at work. So whenever conservative conversations happen at companies like that, it's usually once the door is closed and somebody lets something slip and then the mask is off. That's why nobody goes around to comic book conventions wondering, hey, is this guy secretly woke? No, they want to know if they're based, because this is the kind of thought that is not allowed. It's the whole thing that we talked about when we talk about CNN. CNN wants to control the narrative. They don't want to say, here's the viewpoint. They want to say, here is the only acceptable viewpoint that you can have, and everything else is fringe. So I totally get where Josh is coming from. I'm glad, by the way, that I think he has a job at The Blaze, which I imagine you could be a liberal and work at The Blaze. You might have a hard time doing that, but you could at least be open with your beliefs, and you couldn't directly be fired for having those beliefs.
Nat, this seems to me to be one of the most powerful tools now in terms of these new animations Josh Daws is putting out. This is so powerful versus Hollywood and versus what's been taught. They have gatekept, I believe, the ability, the technology, everything, where these kinds of messages can't get out. But this is so beautiful. And I wonder how much of a threat this is to them, because it is just entirely truthful. And I want to say, too, we've advocated here in the past, I talk about the mainstream middle, the sensible center, and I continue to do so here on this channel. You need liberals and conservatives in society. Okay, I'll go on a little tangent for just a second, then I'll hand it to you, Nat. You need liberals and conservatives in society. You don't, by the way, need woke people, because what woke is anti-truth. And so that's just a whole different thing. You don't want that, trust me. You wouldn't want your plumber to be anti-truth, right? You don't want your plumber to show up and say, well, it's my truth how the pipes work. No, it's not. Does the water come through or not? But when it comes to classical liberals and classical conservatives, these are actually oftentimes associated with your psychology and with your psychological makeup. So you need people who are on various sides of the spectrum, because you need liberals to find problems in society and push forth to make change. And then you need conservatives in society to hold on to the traditions that work and to push back against change that's unnecessary. And when you have both of those sides going at each other, then what happens is you'll make the changes that are deemed necessary, and you'll hold on to the things that really, really work, so that you don't go too far in either direction. If you're too liberal, then what happens is you tear down all kinds of things that actually functioned and made things be appropriate and worthwhile. And then if you're too conservative, you kind of lock yourself right into a position where you can't change and you can't adjust and you can't evolve, and then that's a problem. And this is true in companies. And so what this animated thing is doing is it's saying, hey, inside the Walt Disney Company, there was only one side. There was one orthodoxy, only one thing allowed. And this is how it felt to me, to be the kind of person saying, hey, there are important traditions here to hold on to. There are important things to care for. Everybody only thought in one way. Nat, I think this is a huge danger for the gatekeeping system at the studios. If these kinds of pieces of art come through, look out. This is highly effective in changing hearts and minds.
And I think it would also be great to start and continue to demystify the fact that a lot of people think that conservatives or the right cannot create art, because they can. They've just been silenced by, as you mentioned, the gatekeepers on the other side that have taken over a lot of these institutions that do produce or have historically produced the work and weren't always as left-leaning, let's just call it, as they are now. And it's funny because as an extrapolation with his of this short, that was basically what it was like living in Canada, and being able to leave was great. And seeing how discourse, for example, here in Mexico still exists and it's still possible. And even if people don't agree with you, they'll at least listen to you. They don't shut you down. And I think we have this history here in Mexico, for example, where we distrust the government. So we always have valued being able to discuss and debate things. And I don't see the same thing happening still in many sectors in the US and in Canada, of course, not at all. But here in our regular news channels, people still have differing ideas and debate them. And that is basically what it's about. They take a news story, and very similar to what we're doing here, give their opinions about it. And nobody is not or disallowed from saying anything as much as even our own government wants to do that. So I do see a value in continuing to push the notion that the debate, the discussion, and the different perspectives are valuable and are what essentially builds out an actually rich conversation, culture, debate, discussion, and not to forget that, yes, conservatives can also create art.
And speaking of that, Jonas, it's amazing to see the two pieces come together that's going to make this possible. Technology is reaching the point now where creatives from the central and conservative side, Jonas, we get a lot of fan noise out of you.
Sorry.
But we're at the point now where the tools are making it possible to create this stuff. But then also X came along and made it possible for the delivery system to exist, right? So before they could have blocked this, even if you had the tools to make it, they could have blocked it. X makes it possible to get that out there. And then that's not going to go away for all the faults and failures of X. It's been a huge tool for making this possible. Forces the hand of YouTube and others. And so here we are, Jonas. I think it's a paradigm shift.
I think so too. It'll be interesting to see over the next few years as, there are some people who say, well, it's conservative, therefore we should support it. And then there are some people who actually are legitimate creatives that we need to be paying attention to what they're doing. If we can take away this excuse of the means of the production of all of these wonderful pieces of media that could come down, I think that there's a path forward here, because as a parent, when I think about allowing my children to be around creative people, there's a risk there of handing your children over to people that you don't necessarily know what kind of person they are ideologically. And again, that idea that your viewpoint is unacceptable, and sending your child into an environment where you're going to allow them to be influenced by someone else and not know if that's a free marketplace of ideas or if it's an indoctrination tool to say, actually, the people that you live with are evil. That's the nugget there. That is the problem with a lot of the professional creative class in let's say the United States and conservatives here. So I would love to see a more robust right-leaning or even centrist Hollywood, for lack of a better word, because it's not going to be geographically Hollywood. I just want to see it happen as soon as possible, and not to be something where they say, oh, well, this is conservative, and by the way, it's not very good, but it's conservative, so support it. For your boy, to quote, the whatever.
For your boy. Battle's poorly chosen by that guy. Folks, we'll keep an eye on it, but get ready, because if you thought memes were powerful, get ready for short films and movies that speak to the experience of so many who've suffered under the gatekeeping system and under the idea that you're not allowed to say what you actually believe, even when it's kind and good and wholesome and generated from the hope that the world could be a better place. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for checking out the video today. It's such a pleasure every time we get to endeavor together, explaining entertainment and keeping you ahead of the culture curve. If you would be so kind, folks, swerve on down to that like button wherever you may find it and click it, please. It helps us, and you are the gigawatts that send us far and wide across the fruited plains of YouTube. Until the next time, keep learning, keep growing, and as always, keep having fun.